If you made me the king of college football, there are two things that I would change, and I want to get on my soapbox while we're paying attention to it. I'm going to do it every year till it happens. There is no reason for divisions to exist in college football. It is a stupid and antiquated notion that makes no logical sense for there to be divisions in college football. I'm just going to talk about the SEC, for example, right here. In the SEC right now with 14 teams, when you play an 8-game conference schedule, you end up with 6 teams that you have to play every year in your division, 1 permanent opponent and 1 rotating opponent. That means that every 12 years it is between when you go to play on the road in an SEC stadium. So let me give you an example. LSU hosted Georgia this year. It's a great rivalry game. I love to watch Georgia and LSU play, and I love to watch them play down on the bayou in Death Valley. They will not play in Baton Rouge again until, wait for it, 2030. It will be 2030 until Georgia goes back to LSU and plays in Baton Rouge again. This means a great deal to me as a guy who wrote my first book called Dixieland Delight about going around to every conference stadium. I think that every single player should play a home and away during 4 years in his conference so that you have been everywhere, both home and away. If you just eliminated divisions and you played, I think the math here works out really well. You played 4 yearly rivals, right? No, 3 yearly rivals, and you rotated the other 5. You would play home and away in 4 years against every team in the conference. It would all even out. Now, you'd have to fight to figure out exactly who the 3 rivals are, but you play 3 yearly rivals, and then you play one half of the conference 1 year and the other half of the conference the next year, and then on the backside of that, you would host them home and away. So in a 4-year process, you would be able to play home and away at every SEC school. Divisions prohibit that from happening, so you end up with crappy games every year that nobody cares about. I'll give you an example. Does anybody really care that much about seeing Missouri and Arkansas play every year? Does anybody really care about South Carolina and Texas A&M playing a football game every year? No, of course not. Do away with bad rivalries. 3 yearly rivals, and you play every other team every other year. It ends up completely fair. Here's my second thing that I would change. So do away with divisions everywhere. And obviously in the Big Ten, this is even more ludicrous because the 4 best programs right now are all in the Big Ten East. Maybe Scott Frost is going to change that. Maybe you can make an argument that Wisconsin's one of the 4 best programs. I don't think you can. The 4 best programs in the Big Ten are all in the Big Ten East. Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State are all the 4 best programs in the Big Ten. It's nonsensical for the Big Ten East to produce a team like Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan State or Michigan, maybe it'll happen someday, Michigan fans, and go up against an 8-4 Northwestern team that lost to Akron, that lost to Duke, and that lost to Notre Dame. It's stupid. It makes no sense to have geographic divisions. Divisions in general make no sense. So my number one thing that I would change about college football is I'd do away with all divisions. I think they're nonsensical. If you still want to play conference title games, just take the top 2 teams. Just take whoever the top 2 teams is and put them head to head. The schedules balance out over times. Yes, there might be bitching, but the divisions are more slanted than alternating the schedules would be. So that's part 1. Number 2, conference title games make no sense. We play the regular season so we know who the best teams are already. The best team in the ACC is Clemson. The best team in the Big Ten is Ohio State. The best team in the SEC is Alabama. The best team in the Big 12 is Oklahoma. And the best team in the Pac-12 is Washington. We played all those conference games to determine who the best team was. I had Dan Wetzel on the show this morning, and we were talking. And he said, imagine, this is a great analogy. He said, imagine that you're coaching Little League. And I can imagine that because I do. I coach Little League baseball. I coach Little League basketball. I've done it all, right? I'm a Renaissance man. Imagine if at the end of your Little League baseball season, you had the tournament to decide who the champ was. And the seeding was such that you were coaching the team that had gone undefeated. And they said, hey, we're going to start off this tournament, and you and your team, which has not lost, are going to play the 7th best team in the conference here. And all that's going to happen there is if you lose, your season is over and you don't get to compete for the championship. But if you win, nothing changes. You'd be like, wait a minute. You want me to play my team, which has won every game, even though we're undefeated, against a crappy team, relatively speaking, and all that can happen is my team can lose, and we gain nothing if we win because we already know that we were the number one team. You would say, yeah, we're not going to do that. That makes no sense. My team's not going to play in that game. The risk-reward is completely illogical. That's what conference championship games are. They make no sense. They are thoroughly illogical. They are blatant money grabs designed to exist only for money. I'm not opposed to money, but I like my money to be connected to logic, and there is no logic associated here. Instead, here is what you could be doing. You could be using the College Football Playoff Committee and their top 8 rankings to do this. Alabama could, as the 1 seed, Clemson is the 2, Notre Dame is the 3, Georgia is the 4, Oklahoma is the 5, Ohio State is the 6, Michigan is the 7, and Central Florida is the 8. Okay? This is an incredible setup, right? You've got 8 teams. Take the top 4 teams, put them into the college football playoff as host teams. Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Georgia would all get to host quarterfinal playoff games. And then you would take 5, 6, 7, and 8, and you would put them on the road. Alabama, under this scenario, would play UCF. Clemson would play Michigan. Notre Dame would play Ohio State. And Georgia would play Oklahoma. Can you imagine how phenomenal all of those games on campus would be? You could play them on not this weekend, but next weekend. You could allow all of the fun and festivity and frivolity of college football on campus. You would bring all that money and revenue into the on-campus venues. And I think this is significant, just like in the NFL, you would reward teams with home field advantage who actually won games. Right now, whether you're seeded 1, 2, 3, or 4 doesn't matter, because you're basically playing a neutral site game, and the difference is relatively insubstantial. Last year, Clemson played Alabama. Alabama was favored to win that game. It wouldn't have mattered if Alabama was the 1 or if they were the 4. The 2 and the 3 doesn't actually matter. I am knocking away the idea of auto bids from Power 5 conferences because my concern is, what would you do if 7 and 5 Pitt beats Clemson? Or what would you do if Utah beats Washington? If your team isn't good enough at the end of the year to be in the top 8, then you don't deserve to play for a championship. Florida is the number 9 team in America right now. Even if you are a Florida Gator fan, do you believe that Florida played well enough during this year to compete for a national championship? That's absurd. LSU is the 10. Sorry, LSU, you lost 3 games. Washington's the 11, Penn State's the 12, Washington State is the 13, Texas, Kentucky. None of these teams deserve to play for national championships. 8 is the sweet spot. Leave it at 8. Play 4 games on campus. Let the College Football Playoff Committee seed it just like they seed the NCAA tournament, and let's roll. Each of these games would be worth $150 million or more, which is vastly more than the conference title games are worth. And then you could roll that additional $600 million at least which would double the overall value for the schools and the conferences for what the college football playoff is worth now. You redistribute that money, and it makes the athletic departments a lot more able to support all the other sports which nobody watches. This is perfect logic. Play a regular season, get in the top 8, make the college football playoff, and then you got to win 3 games and you're there, and you eliminate the necessity of all these worthless conference title games. That is my position.